Hi guys, so today's video, we'll be talking about obviously one of the most famous entertainers in history, and that is just not for debate. Michael Jackson. Yeah, he remains one of the most famous entertainers in history, known as the King of Pop. He transformed music, dance, fashion, and popular culture. He was one of the most influential people when it came to music, and even other things as well. His albums sold hundreds of millions of copies worldwide. Songs like Thriller, Billie Jean, and Beat It became global phenomena, and his influence continues decades after his death. But alongside his extraordinary success, Michael Jackson's life was overshadowed by allegations of child sexual abuse that followed him for years. Supporters argue that he was the victim of false accusations and extortion attempts. Even today, more than a decade after his death, in 2009, the debate remains intense. In this video, we'll explain the allegations, the investigations, the court cases, the evidence, the defences, and the questions that continue to divide public opinion. This is not a verdict, instead it's a look at one of the most controversial stories in entertainment history. Before discussing the allegations, it's important to understand who Michael Jackson was and why this story became so significant. Born in 1958 in Gary, Indiana, Jackson began performing as a child with the Jackson 5. By the 1970s, he had become one of the most recognizable young performers in America. His solo career eventually reached unprecedented heights. In 1982, Thriller became the best-selling album in history. Jackson wasn't simply a successful musician. He became a global cultural phenomenon. Millions viewed him as a genius artist, while others saw him as a deeply unusual figure whose life became increasingly detached from normal reality. His enormous wealth allowed him to create Neverland Ranch, a sprawling property featuring amusement rides, animals, and attractions that reflected his fascination with childhood. Jackson frequently said that his own childhood had been stolen by fame and strict parental expectations. He often spoke about wanting to recreate the childhood experiences he had never had. For supporters, this explains much of his behaviour. For critics, some of the behaviour raised serious concerns. The first major allegations emerged in 1993. A 13-year-old boy named Jordan Chandler accused Michael Jackson of sexual abuse. The allegations quickly became international news. Law enforcement agencies launched investigations. Jackson denied all accusations. His legal team emerged that the allegations were financially motivated. The case became extraordinarily complicated because there were both criminal and civil dimensions. One of the most discussed aspects involved claims that Jordan Chandler provided investigators with a description of Jackson's body. Some observers have argued that aspects of the description match findings from a police examination. Others have argued that reports surrounding this issue were incomplete, disputed, or misrepresented over the years. The exact significance of this evidence remains heavily debated. As the investigation continued, Jackson's public image suffered substantial damage. Then came a major turning point. In 1994, Jackson reached a civil settlement with Chandler's family. Reports placed the settlement at roughly $20 million. Importantly, a civil settlement is not a criminal conviction. Jackson's supporters argue that the settlement was a business decision intended to end damaging litigation and allow him to move forward. Critics argue that settling such a case raises legitimate questions. The criminal investigation continued despite the settlement. Ultimately, prosecutors did not bring criminal charges. One reason frequently cited is that Jordan Chandler reportedly declined to cooperate with criminal proceedings. Without key testimony, prosecutors concluded they lacked significant evidence to proceed. As a result, no criminal trial occurred. The case ended without a conviction, but public controversy remained. For many people, this was the beginning of a debate that would continue for decades. The allegations transformed how the public viewed Michael Jackson. Before 1993, discussions about Jackson typically focused on music, dance, and celebrity. Afterward, conversations increasingly centered on accusations and investigations. Media coverage became relentless. Television programs, newspapers, and tabloids devoted enormous attention to every development. Some journalists argued that the aggressive scrutiny was necessary because the allegations were serious. Others argued that sensational media coverage often blurred the distinction between accusations and proven facts. This tension would become a recurring theme throughout Jackson's life. Supporters claimed he was being tried in court of public opinion. Critics claimed that public attention was warranted because of the nature of the allegations. One of the central issues in discussions about Michael Jackson is his relationship with children. Jackson frequently spent time with children and invited many families to Neverland Ranch. He often described these relationships as innocent friendships. He repeatedly stated that he identified strongly with children because he felt deprived of a normal childhood. He also acknowledged sharing bedrooms with children, though he insisted there was nothing sexual about it. This became one of the most controversial aspects of his life. Many people viewed the behavior as highly inappropriate regardless of intent. Others accepted Jackson's explanation that the arrangements were innocent and non-sexual. In later interviews, Jackson openly discussed sharing his bedroom with children. He appeared genuinely confused by criticism and argued that sharing space with children reflected generosity and trust. Critics viewed those statements as alarming. Supporters viewed them as evidence that Jackson did not believe he was doing anything wrong. The disargument over how to interrupt this behavior remains central to debates about his legacy. In 2003, British journalist Martin Basher released the documentary Living with Michael Jackson. The documentary attracted enormous attention. Viewers saw Jackson discussing his life, Neverland Ranch, and his relationships with children. One moment generated particular controversy. Jackson appeared to acknowledge sharing his bedroom with children, and defended the practice. The public reaction was intense. Many viewers found the comments disturbing. Jackson later claimed that the documentary was misleading and unfairly edited. His supporters accused Basher of manipulating footage to create a negative portrayal. Shortly after the documentary aired, new allegations emerged. A young cancer survivor named Gavin Arvizo accused Jackson of sexual abuse. Law enforcement launched another major investigation. This time, prosecutors moved forward with criminal charges. The result would become the most significant legal battle of Jackson's life. The 2005 trial attracted worldwide attention. Jackson faced multiple charges related to alleged child molestation and other offences. The proceeding lasted 7 months. The prosecution argued that Jackson had abused Gavin and used his fame and influence to manipulate victims and their families. Prosecutors presented witnesses and evidence intended to support their case. The defense strongly challenged those claims. Jackson's attorneys argued that the allegations were false and financially motivated. They attacked the credibility of key witnesses and highlighted inconsistencies in testimony. The defense also presented evidence and witnesses supporting Jackson's innocence. The trial became a battle over credibility. Jurors heard dramatically different interpretations of events. Supporters of Jackson believed that the prosecution case was weak. Critics believed that the allegation deserved serious consideration. After months of testimony, the jury reached a verdict. Michael Jackson was acquitted on all his counts, not guilty. The verdict represented a major legal victory for Jackson. His supporters viewed it as complete vindication. Critics argued that it does not necessarily establish innocence and noted that criminal cases require proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Legally speaking, however, Jackson left the courtroom without any criminal conviction. Although acquitted, Jackson's reputation never fully recovered. The trial had been exhausting both financially and emotionally. He spent increasing amounts of time outside the United States. His public appearances became less frequent. Media attention remained intense. Many supporters believe he had been unfairly targeted for years. Others believe serious questions remained unsolved. By the late 2000s, Jackson appeared focused on rebuilding his career. In 2009, he announced a major concert series titled "This Is It." The planned comeback generated enormous excitement, but before it could begin, tragedy struck. On June 25th, 2009, Michael Jackson died at age 50. His death shocked the world. Millions mourned. News coverage dominated global media. Investigations later determined that propofol intoxication contributed to his death. His personal physician, Conrad Murray, was eventually convicted of involuntary manslaughter. Jackson's death transformed public conversations about his life. For a period, focus shifted away from allegations and back toward his artistic achievements. His music experienced renewed popularity. Documentaries celebrated his career. Tributes appeared worldwide, yet the controversy surrounding the allegations would eventually return. In 2019, a documentary called Leaving Neverland reignited debate on a massive scale. The film focused on the accounts of Wade Robson and James Safechuck. Both men described relationships with Jackson that they alleged involved sexual abuse when they were children. The documentary generated enormous attention. Many viewers found the account compelling and emotionally powerful. Critics of Jackson argued that the film reinforced long-standing concerns. Supporters immediately challenged the documentary. They pointed to inconsistencies they believed existed within the claims. They noted that Jackson was deceased and unable to respond. They also argued that some allegations had changed over time. The release of the documentary led to renewed scrutiny of Jackson's legacy. Radio stations, television networks, and cultural institutions faced questions about how to handle his work. Some organizations reduced airplay or removed content temporarily. Others continued treating Jackson primarily as a musical icon. The debate intensified once again. To understand why this issue remains controversial, it's important to examine the arguments made by Jackson's defenders. Supporters frequently point to several facts. First, Michael Jackson was never convicted of a crime related to child sexual abuse. Second, the 2005 criminal trial ended in acquittal on all charges. Third, defenders argue that some accusers and families had potential financial motives. Fourth, supporters contend that media coverage often emphasizes allegations which minimize an evidence favorable to Jackson. Many defenders also argue that Jackson's unusual behavior was mistaken for evidence of criminal conduct. They say he was emotionally immature, socially isolated, and obsessed with recreating childhood experiences. According to this view of behavior that appeared suspicious was not necessarily criminal. Some supporters additionally question the credibility of certain abusers and cite disparities in various accounts. For these individuals, the available evidence falls short of proving guilt. Critics present a very different perspective. They argue that multiple allegations emerged over the many years from different individuals. They contend that this pattern deserves serious consideration. Critics also point to Jackson's admitted behavior, including spending excessive time with unrelated children and sharing sleeping arrangements. Even if no criminal conviction resulted, critics argue that such conduct was highly inappropriate. Some critics further note that sexual abuse cases can be difficult to prosecute. Victims may delay reporting. Evidence may be limited. Witnesses may be reluctant to testify. From this perspective, acquittals and lack of convictions do not automatically settle the question. Critics therefore view the allegations as credible and worthy of continued examination. One reason the debate persists is that people often approach the evidence from fundamentally different perspectives. Some focus primarily on legal outcomes. From that standpoint, Jackson was investigated, tried, and never convicted. Others focus on the broader pattern of allegations and behavior. From that perspective, legal outcomes do not necessarily resolve every concern. Another factor is Michael Jackson's immense fame. A few public figures inspire stronger emotions. For many fans, his music played a major role in their lives. For others, the allegations are impossible to separate from his legacy. As a result, discussions about Jackson often become emotionally charged. People are not merely debating evidence. They are also debating identity, memory, celebrity culture, and how society should evaluate famous individuals. The controversy has also sparked a large cultural question. Can people separate an artist's work from allegations surrounding their personal life? Some listeners continue enjoying Jackson's music while acknowledging the allegations. Others feel uncomfortable supporting his work because of the allegations. Still, others believe the absence of criminal convictions means his artistic legacy should remain untouched. There is no universal answer. Different people reach different conclusions. The decision extends beyond Michael Jackson and applies to many influential figures throughout history. After decades of investigations, lawsuits, and documentaries, books, and public debate, several facts remain clear. Michael Jackson was accused of child sexual abuse by multiple individuals. He consistently denied the allegations. He reached a civil settlement in the Chandler case. He was criminally charged in the Arvizo case. A jury acquitted him of all charges in 2005. No criminal court ever convicted him of child sexual abuse. At the same time, allegations continued after his death, including claims presented in Leaving Neverland. Public opinion remains deeply divided regarding the significance and credibility of these allegations. Reasonable people continue to argue. Michael Jackson's story is one of extraordinary achievement and enduring controversy. He changed popular music forever. He inspired generations of performers. His influence on entertainment remains immense, yet the allegations against him continue to shape how many people view him and his legacy. For some, the legal record and lack of conviction support the conclusion that Jackson was wrongfully accused. For others, the accusations, patterns of behavior, and testimony from accusers left unresolved concerns. More than 15 years after his death, the debate shows no sign of disappearing. Perhaps that is because Michael Jackson's story touches on questions that extend far beyond one individual. How should society evaluate allegations when legal outcomes are inconclusive? How should fame influence public perception? Can extraordinary artistic achievement be separated from personal controversy? And when evidence remains disputed, how should history remember someone whose legacy continues to divide opinion? Those questions remain open. What is certain is that Michael Jackson remains one of the most discussed, celebrated, scrutinized, and controversial figures in modern cultural history. If you found this video informative, consider liking, subscribing, and sharing your perspective respectfully in the comments. As always, thank you for watching.